Welcome to the Bible Answer Man broadcast with your host, Hank Hanegraaff. The Bible Answer Man is the radio ministry of the Christian Research Institute, designed to equip believers to defend their faith and become true disciples of the Lord Jesus Christ, because life and truth matter. Our phone number is 888-7000-CRI. You can find us on the internet at equip.org. If you'd like to ask Hank a question, then call in now. Just dial 888-ASK-HANK. That's 888-275-4265. And now, to begin today's broadcast, here's Hank Hanegraaff.
Thank you, Randy, and a quick reminder that you can also contact us via the mail at Box 8500, Charlotte, North Carolina, zip code 28271. I want to kick off this week's programming by asking a question, and that question is, what do racism, riots, and the radicalism that we are experiencing in our epoch of time all have in common? And my answer is that all three are the ripened fruit of decades of educational indoctrination. And as such, I want to discuss these issues on sequential Bible Answer Man broadcasts. But today, I want to start with the matter of racism. Racism has been institutionalized by the American educational system. That's quite a mouthful. But consider one of the premier educators of our generation, a man by the name of Dr. Alex Rosenberg. I've mentioned him on previous episodes of the Bible Answer Man broadcast. Why? Because he is the vaunted R. Taylor Cole Professor of Philosophy at Duke University and the co-director of the Duke Center for Philosophy of Biology. No small credential. And he is determined that no one fails to understand the full implications of Darwin's evolutionary paradigm. He famously said that we have to understand why in a universe made only by physics, the process that Darwin discovered is the only game in town. And what are the implications of Darwin's evolutionary paradigm? What are the implications of pontificating that all the organic beings that have ever lived on this earth have descended from some one primordial form? That all of us are in the midst of evolutionary flux? That some races are more favorably evolved than others? Well, the answer may be self-evident, but it does bear elaboration for the uninitiated. In the famed volume, The Descent of Man, Darwin connects the dots. He makes explicit that his notorious subtitle, The Preservation of Favored Races in the Struggle for Life, applies not only to racehorses, but to human races. Here's a word-for-word rendition of what he penned. He said, at some future period, not very distant as measured by centuries, the civilized races of man will almost certainly exterminate and replace the savage races throughout the world. Do you get that? Not only is this Darwinian paradigm the only game in town, but according to Rosenberg's Atheist Guide to Reality, 95% of the most distinguished scientists in America, along with their foreign associate members, have employed it to dispense with God, to dispense with the very being who created humanity in his image and likeness, thus bestowing upon every man, woman, and child intrinsic worth and absolute equality. Little wonder, then, that the epic Civil War drama Gone with the Wind is now, well, gone, censored, banned. Yet Inherit the Wind, not Gone with the Wind, but Inherit the Wind, a film in which evolutionists are pictured as benevolent intellectuals, continues to circulate as a propaganda piece for evolutionary eugenics. The well-known theme of the film is that of the 1925 Scopes trial, in which a teacher is jailed for violating a state law prohibiting the teaching of evolution. George William Hunter's textbook, A Civic Biology, is at the center of the drama. As a professed progenitor of progress, John Scopes used this very text to convince impressionable students that humanity has an evolutionary hierarchy, that if we follow the early history of man upon earth, we find that at first he must have been little better than one of the lower animals, that at present there exist upon the earth 5 races or varieties of man, that there are, and I'm quoting now, there are the Negro type, originating in Africa, the Malay or brown race from the islands of the Pacific, the American Indian, the Mongolian or yellow race, which includes natives of China, Japan, and the Eskimos, and finally the highest type of all, the Caucasians, represented by the civilized white inhabitants of Europe and America. The text goes so far as to say that the remedy for those not well born should be extermination. If such people were lower animals, we would probably kill them off to prevent them from spreading. Imagine that. Little wonder that Margaret Sanger, the birth mother of Planned Parenthood, was bent on the extermination of those not well born, those who represented a throwback to earlier stages of human evolution. And while all of this is being breathlessly touted by the evolutionary establishment as evolvement, in reality it represents a throwback to 19th century scientists who hypothesized that the gene pool was being corrupted by the less fit genes of inferior people. And for evolution to succeed, they reckoned it as crucial that the unfit die as that the fittest survive. Why? Because if the unfit survived indefinitely, they would continue to infect the fit with their less fit genes. The result is that the genes would be corrupted. And worse yet, that, in their view, evolution would be compromised. The logical progression is hardly surprising. But what is breathtaking is the vast rapidity with which this baseless theory is embraced by the masses. Tomorrow, if possible, I want to extend the discussion beyond racism to the phenomenon of riots, the raiding, the ransacking, the robbery, that have not only become rampant, but are broadly being rationalized. Why? Because as the famed biologist and philosopher Alex Rosenberg has been telling his students and readers, in a world where physics fixes all the facts, it's hard to see how there could be room for moral facts. Why? Because if Darwinism is true, then anything goes. We need to face the fact that nihilism is true and that there is no intrinsic moral value. Our core morality isn't true, right, correct, and neither is any other. Nature just seduced us into thinking it's right. because nihilism denies that there is anything at all that is good in itself, or for that matter, bad in itself. Again, the subject of a future edition of the Bible Answer Man broadcast, perhaps tomorrow. But all of this should motivate you to support the Christian Research Institute, committed to speaking truth to this culture, no matter what the cost. You can give in a safe, secure fashion on the web at equip.org, along with my thanks for standing shoulder to shoulder with me in the battle for life and truth. Remember the resource of the month, Never Give Up, which is a great word for us today. We ought never to give up in the battle for truth and the battle for life. We'll be right back.
God, where are you? This was the question contemplated by K.P. Yohannan, author of the classic book Revolution in World Missions, as he found himself in a very dark season of despair. His new book, Never Give Up, is the story of how the Lord carried K.P. Yohannan through the most difficult hours of his life, and highlights his hope that the story of a broken man can bring glory to Christ and impact a generation. To receive your copy of Never Give Up, the story of a broken man impacting a generation, call 888-7000-CRI and make a gift to support the Christian Research Institute's life-changing outreaches during the financially critical month of June. 888-7000-CRI or visit us at equip.org. We'll be back in just a moment with more from Hank Hanegraaff.
For decades, Hank Hanegraaff has shared the truth of the historic Christian faith by answering questions over the radio, defending the faith through the written word, and preaching from pulpits around the globe. Today, he is ready to share his life in Christ, as detailed in his most profoundly personal piece of penmanship to date, Truth Matters, Life Matters More. Hank feels closer to Christ than ever before and wants you to learn from his experiences as recounted in Truth Matters, Life Matters More, so that you can join him on life's greatest journey, the journey toward union with God in Christ. To receive your copy of Truth Matters, Life Matters More, The Unexpected Beauty of an Authentic Christian Life, call 888-7000-CRI and make a gift to support the Christian Research Institute's life-changing outreaches, 888-7000-CRI, or visit us at equip.org. We've seen good times and hard times, but nothing quite like these times. The consequences of the coronavirus pandemic and massive urban unrest have been nothing short of shocking. In such times, people desperately need hope and courage. God brings certain books and people into our lives precisely when we need them. Never Give Up is one of those books, and K.P. Yohannan is one of those people. Through times of trial, we come to know what it truly means to know Christ. Simply put, Never Give Up, the story of a broken man impacting a generation, is the perfect book for this precise moment in history. To receive your copy of Never Give Up, the story of a broken man impacting a generation, call 888-7000-CRI and make a gift to support the Christian Research Institute's life-changing outreaches, 888-7000-CRI, or visit us at equip.org.
Anyone who's been paying attention knows there's a war going on, not just on traditional morality, civility, and decency, but even more fundamentally on historic notions of truth. And the enemy isn't just the onslaught of fake news facilitated by a post-truth culture and turbocharged by growing legions of ideological spin doctors. No, the real enemies of truth range from postmodernist convictions that there is no objective truth to militant scientism that claims that only science can determine truth, and religion is little more than primitive superstitions. But CRI support team members are not waving a white flag of surrender. They're holding the fort by undergirding every one of Christian Research Institute's mind-shaping and life-changing outreaches 24/7. To learn how you can make a difference and enjoy all the benefits of support team membership, simply visit equip.org. Let's return to your host, Hank Hanegraaff.
Thank you very much, Randy. I should mention, in light of what I said in the first segment of the broadcast today, that the idea or the connection between evolution and racism is not the product of anyone's fertile imagination. I think of Stephen Jay Gould, the late now Stephen Jay Gould, who notes that recapitulation, this is the idea that ontogeny recapitulates phylogeny, that the emerging embryo goes through all the stages of evolution. First it is a fish, and then it becomes froggy, and eventually it becomes a fetus. But this actually is an idea, as Stephen Jay Gould points out, an idea that was the basis for Dr. Down labeling Down syndrome mongoloid idiocy. Why? Because he thought it represented a throwback to the Mongolian stage in human evolution. Tragically, the term mongoloid was first applied to mentally defective people because it was then commonly believed, as Stephen Jay Gould points out, that the mongoloid race had not yet evolved to the status of the Caucasian or the upper caste race. Of course, Haeckel and Hitler used this notion of recapitulation as a pretense for furthering the myth of the Aryan master race. I find it absolutely incredible that people today could be speaking about racism as an evil out of one side of their mouth and supporting the very structure that it allowed it to become a supreme force in our culture. It is incredible to think that evolutionists such as an American ambassador, a successful scientist, the chairman of a skeptic society would champion recapitulation as a basis for virulent racism. In an article entitled Dr. Down Syndrome, Stephen Jay Gould famously decried recapitulation's responsibility for the racism of the post-Darwinian era. His words are memorable. He said that a recapitulation provided a convenient focus for the pervasive racism of white scientists. They looked to the activities of their own children for comparison with normal adult behavior in lower races. And lest we suppose this to be the mere prejudice of 19th century scientists, consider the 20th century pseudoscience of eugenics. Eugenics which hypothesized that the gene pool, as I said in the first segment of the broadcast today, was being corrupted by the less fit genes of inferior people. For evolution to succeed, it was as crucial that the unfit die as that the fittest survive, because if the unfit survived indefinitely, they would continuously infect the fit with their less fit genes, and the result is that more fit genes would be corrupted and evolution compromised. And so the plan was to identify the less fit and stop them from breeding by institutional isolation or through sterilization. This progression from evolution to eugenics is hardly surprising, but what is breathtaking is the rapidity with which this baseless theory has been embraced by the cultural elite and now vicariously by the masses. German scientists who gassed the feeble-minded were considered forward-thinking back then. They were rewarded with grants from institutions like the Rockefeller Foundation right up to the onset of World War II. And it wasn't until the ghastly reality of eugenics reached full bloom in the genocidal mania of German death camps that it quietly vanished into the night. Thankfully, eugenics has faded into the recesses of history, but the consequences of the evolutionary dogma that birthed it are with us today, and we can see it manifest in the racism that is so rampant within our educational institutions. It's the Kool-Aid that has been drunk by millions. And we can rightly ask, well, is this true or is it false? In other words, okay, maybe it's bad Kool-Aid, but maybe evolution is true. Well, the reality is it's not. It's a fairy tale for grown-ups. Maybe worse, it's a cruel hoax. The arguments that support evolutionary theory are astonishingly weak. It is astonishing that it is hailed with such bravado. And I say that because, first and foremost, the fossil record is an embarrassment to evolution. No verifiable transitions from one kind to another have as yet been found. This whole idea of 5 different gradations of human beings is the figment of a fertile imagination. Of course, Darwin had an excuse. In his day, fossil finds were relatively scarce. Today, I've said it many times, it bears repeating, there is an abundance of fossils, and yet we have yet to find the projected wealth of transitions from kinds to other kinds. A second point that is memorable is that in Darwin's day, such enormously complex structures such as a human egg were thought to be, well, very, very simple. For all practical purposes, they were relegated to little more than microscopic blobs of gelatin. Well, what's the status today? Should we still believe in evolution? No. We know that a fertilized human egg is among the most organized, complex structures in the entire universe. And thus, in our age of scientific enlightenment, we hear progressives talking about this all the time. It is incredible to think that people are willing to maintain that something so vastly complex arose by mere chance. So like an egg, we could talk about other very complex structures, the human eye, or for that matter, the earth. They're all masterpieces of precision and design that did not come into existence by mere chance. And a third point that I hope is impressed upon the tablet of your consciousness, impregnated into your memory trace, is that while chance is a blow to the theory of evolution, the laws of science are a bullet to its head. The basic laws of science, and that includes the laws of effects and their causes, of energy conservation, of entropy, undergird the creation model for origins and undermine the evolutionary hypothesis. So, while on the one hand we should fight for a person's right to believe science fiction, we must resist evolving attempts to equate the quote-unquote certainty of macroevolution, the evolution from one species to another species, with such scientific certainties as the law of gravity. You and I have been commissioned to make a difference while there is yet time. So often we can talk about systemic racism without ever digging down deeply and finding where is this root. Or we find this root with a major transition that took place in the thinking of many in Western civilization. The thinking that God did not create human beings, but that we evolved. That man is merely a progression in a series of beings that started with apes and ended up with modern human beings. Ideas of consequences, and the racism that is pervasive today finds its root squarely in the evolutionary hypothesis. Again, we will continue speaking truth in an age in which truth is under siege, and we ask you to stand shoulder to shoulder with us in the battle for life and truth. You can give in a safe, secure fashion on the web at equip.org. Thanks for tuning in.
Thank you for listening to the Bible Answer Man broadcast with Hank Hanegraaff. In appreciation for your vital gift to help strengthen and expand the life-changing outreaches of the Christian Research Institute, Hank would like to send you Never Give Up, the story of a broken man impacting a generation by K.P. Yohannan. Just call 888-7000-CRI and make a gift to support the Christian Research Institute's life-changing outreaches during the financially critical month of June. 888-7000-CRI or visit us at equip.org. You can also write to CRI at Post Office Box 8500, Charlotte, North Carolina 28271. The Bible Answer Man broadcast is funded solely by listeners like you. We're on the air because truth matters and life matters more.
We've seen good times and hard times, but nothing quite like these times. The consequences of the coronavirus pandemic and massive urban unrest have been nothing short of shocking. In such times, people desperately need hope and courage. God brings certain books and people into our lives precisely when we need them. Never Give Up is one of those books, and K.P. Yohannan is one of those people. Through times of trial, we come to know what it truly means to know Christ. Simply put, Never Give Up, the story of a broken man impacting a generation, is the perfect book for this precise moment in history. To receive your copy of Never Give Up, the story of a broken man impacting a generation, call 888-7000-CRI and make a gift to support the Christian Research Institute's life-changing outreaches, 888-7000-CRI, or visit us at equip.org.